The glass reflected the city behind her, but every gaze in the room pinned her to the spot. She moved toward the long table, heels clicking on polished marble, and took the empty seat at the far end. "Miss Carter," one of the executives said, his tone polite enough to be cutting. "We weren't expecting you." "You were," she replied quietly, laying a slim folder on the table. "You just didn't think I'd use the front door." A ripple of chuckles, low, dismissive, passed between them. The man across from her leaned back. "This meeting's a high-level funding discussion." "Not exactly," he stopped, as if the word he wanted might sound worse. Out loud, she let the silence grow, the hum of the city far below filling the space. "Not exactly for someone like me." No one answered. Her eyes moved from face to face, noting the slight smirks, the folded arms. "Interesting. You look at me and see limits. I look at you and see a skyline that could be taller." One woman finally spoke, voice clipped. "This is business. Let's keep it professional." She smiled without warmth. Professional is understanding the value in front of you before it walks out. A pause. Someone shifted in their chair. "Miss Carter," the first man said again. "Softer now. We appreciate your enthusiasm." She stood, gathering her folder. "You'll appreciate more than that soon." As she turned toward the door, the city stretched wide in the glass. Their world big enough to hold her, but their minds too small to see it. The click of the door closing behind her left them staring at one another, suddenly aware they might have just watched something or someone slip away. The smiles didn't reach their eyes. They slid across their faces like someone flipping a switch, practiced enough to seem effortless almost. "Ms. Carter," one man said, his tone dipped in sugar. "So good to see you here." She nodded. "Is it?" A brief chuckle from him, light enough to mask the sting. "Of course, we value all perspectives." The pause before all hung heavier than the word itself. Another leaned forward, resting clasped hands on the table. "You must understand, our world moves fast. Decisions get made in rooms like this every day. It can be intimidating." Her fingers traced the edge of her folder. Intimidating for who? No one answered. The woman at the far end tilted her head, smiling as if they shared a secret. "You have presence, Ms. Carter, but presence isn't influence." The sentence landed softly, but she felt the cut beneath. "Maybe not," she said, "but influence is sometimes knowing when not to smile." The room shifted, just slightly. Eyes darted, a throat cleared. They mean well, she thought, though she didn't believe it. The trick wasn't hearing the words. It was catching the places where their polish chipped. "Perhaps," she added, standing slowly, "you'll realize that before your next meeting." They remained seated, still smiling, but thinner now, edges fraying. Her heels clicked toward the door. She didn't need to see their faces to know the impact. Their greetings had been polished. Their goodbyes would not be. The laughter was low, almost casual, the kind people thought wouldn't stick. But it did. It settled in her chest like a weight. She kept her gaze on the water glass in front of her, and the rest of us. Her tone was even, but the question cut through the air. The man shrugged. "I'm sure you're learning." The word learning landed softer than a slap, but carried the same sting. Her eyes lifted slowly. "Learning what?" "How to sit through a meeting where my expertise is treated like decoration." The chuckles faltered. One man shifted in his chair, tapping his pen. "It's not personal, Ms. Carter. Just the way things are done here." "That's the problem," she said. The woman at the far end leaned forward, her voice warm enough to almost pass for concern. "Don't take offense. It was just a joke." She tilted her head. Jokes usually have something funny in them. Silence fell, not heavy, but sharp, the kind that pricked at everyone present. Another CEO cleared his throat. "We should move on." She didn't. "You want to move on because it's easier than sitting in the discomfort you created." The smirker's jaw tightened. He leaned in, smile gone. "Careful." Her lips curved, not in kindness, but in quiet resolve. "I'm always careful. That's why I'm still here." No one laughed this time. Somewhere in the room, a chair squeaked. The sound was louder than the earlier laughter. She glanced at the clock, then at the door. They had wanted her to absorb the insult. Instead, she handed it back, stripped of the charm they thought disguised it, and for the first time that morning, they didn't know where to look. The condensation on the glass traced slow lines onto the table, pooling beneath her fingertips. She hadn't moved in minutes. "You're awfully quiet," the man across from her said, shifting in his seat. She didn't look up. "I'm thinking." His laugh was short, uneasy. "About what?" "That you've spoken for 20 minutes, without saying anything worth hearing." A few heads turned toward her, the way people do when they sense trouble but don't want to be caught staring. "I was explaining policy," he replied, voice clipped. "No," she said, eyes still on the glass. "You were explaining why I should accept being ignored." A pause, not long, but jagged. Someone coughed. "That's not fair," he said finally. She raised her gaze, slow enough to make him shift again. "Neither is this meeting." The woman beside him interjected, "We're all trying to work together, then listen when I speak." She cut in, her tone flat but solid. Silence. It stretched until it felt heavy. She reached for the glass, paused just short of lifting it. "Funny thing about water," she murmured. "It waits, doesn't rush to prove it's useful." He frowned, unsure whether it was a metaphor or an insult. "Maybe both." She set the glass back down, untouched. The sound was soft, but it seemed to echo. Somewhere near the end of the table, a chair scraped back. No one spoke. In that stillness, she realized something. They could fill the air with words all they wanted. She didn't have to join them to own the room. And from the way a few eyes stayed fixed on her, they realized it too. "Good," the man replied, though it came out too fast, too defensive. She leaned back, folding her hands. "You'll get exactly what you've allowed me to give so far." A ripple passed through the room. A few glances exchanged, some pretending not to hear. "That's not fair," he said again, quieter this time. She tilted her head. "Fair? You think fair is being asked to show up and stay silent?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, pressing his lips together. Someone at the far end shifted papers. "We're all on the same team here," they offered. But their tone lacked conviction. "Teams work when everyone plays," she said. "Not when half are benched before the game starts." Silence again. It felt heavier now, pressing against the walls. He cleared his throat. "Look, I didn't mean you did," she said, calm but unyielding. "And you'll keep meaning it until someone tells you to stop." For a second, his composure cracked, the briefest flicker of doubt. In his eyes, she caught it, held it. "Consider this me telling you." A few people shifted in their chairs. The room seemed smaller somehow. He leaned back, gaze breaking from hers. "All right," he muttered, but it sounded more like retreat than agreement. She stood, smoothing. Her skirt, the motion deliberate. Then we understand each other. No one stopped her as she walked out, but the air she left behind felt different, as if she'd taken something with her, somewhere inside. She knew she had, and for the first time all meeting, so did they. The hum of the projector filled the silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers. "You're quiet," one of them said, without looking up. She didn't turn from the window. "I've said everything worth saying here." A low chuckle came from the other side of the table. "We'll see about that next quarter." Her hand traced the edge of her folder. "No," she replied softly, "you won't." The room stilled. For a beat, someone tapped a pen, slow, deliberate. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said, finally facing them, "you won't see me here next quarter." Brows furrowed. "You're quitting." Her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "Call it moving on." A chair creaked as one of them leaned forward. "This is a bad time to be making dramatic decisions." "It's the perfect time," she said. "You just don't know it yet." The projector clicked to the next slide. Growth charts, forecasts, numbers marching upward like nothing could touch them. "Everything's on track." Someone muttered, almost to himself. She let the words hang there, knowing soon they'd sound foolish. "Enjoy the track while it lasts." They exchanged quick glances, annoyance, confusion, something sharper beneath. One of them scoffed. "You think you're bigger than this place?" Her eyes locked on his. "No, I know I am." For a moment no one breathed. Then she gathered her papers, slow and precise, each movement echoing in the stillness. Without waiting for a dismissal, she stood, "Meeting's over for me." As she walked out, no one called her name. But the room felt different. A ripple under the surface, a shift they couldn't name yet. They wouldn't see it coming. That was the point. The hallway smelled faintly of burnt coffee and printer ink. She clutched the folder tighter, hearing muffled laughter from behind the glass. The door opened just enough for a tall man in a navy suit to slip out. He avoided her eyes. "They're wrapping up," he muttered, moving past her. She stepped forward, hopeful. The secretary stood, blocking her view. "Sorry, they ran out of time," she said, her tone polite but final. "I was on the agenda," she replied, her voice careful. "Things shifted," the woman said, glancing toward the room. "They'll catch you next time." She swallowed hard. This was time-sensitive. The secretary's smile didn't reach her eyes. "They know." Through the narrow gap, she caught a glimpse, papers signed, hands shaking. The kind of nods people give when something's already done. She stayed rooted in place, the pitch notes digging into her palm. "Can I leave a copy?" "They'll find it in your email," the woman replied, already turning away. Her chest felt heavy, but her face didn't move. "Right," she said quietly. Behind her footsteps echoed to junior analysts, whispering, avoiding her gaze. One offered a small, almost guilty smile before hurrying past. She stood there until the conference room emptied. No one met her eyes. No one asked what she had prepared. Only when the last chair scraped back into place did she step inside, staring at the spotless table as if it might still hold her chance. It didn't. She slid the folder into her bag, the paper edges catching her skin. That small sting was the only proof she'd even been there. When she walked away, the secretary didn't look up, but she knew she had heard the quiet click of the first door closing. The applause was still fading when she stepped back from the edge of the meeting room. Her ideas, every chart, every campaign outline had just been paraded across the screen by someone else's voice. "Brilliant work," the department head said, clapping the man on the back. "Exactly the kind of initiative we reward here." She kept her arms folded, willing herself not to speak yet. Across the table, Mark, the one who had lifted her strategy wholesale, caught her eye. "Hope you don't mind," he said casually, sliding into his chair. "We had to move fast. Your notes were a great starting point. A starting point." Her voice was low, even. He shrugged. "You'll get your turn. Just be patient." She didn't answer. Patience, the word had been given to her before, always as a leash, never as a gift. The manager leaned toward her. "You're a team player, right? This is for the greater good." "And who decides?" "The greater good?" she asked, steady but cold. A pause settled over the table. Someone shuffled papers. Mark chuckled lightly, as if to break the tension. "Don't make this about credit. We all win if the company wins." She pushed her chair back slowly. "Funny, some people seem to win faster." The room quieted. The department head cleared his throat, looking at her as if she had crossed an unspoken line. She gathered her folder, tucking away the drafts they hadn't yet stolen. "You'll find the rest." "Harder to copy," she said, her voice almost a whisper. When she left, no one stopped her. But their silence followed. Not approval, not guilt. Something in between. Something uneasy, ChatGPT said. Her coffee had gone cold before she even noticed. The file sat open in front of her, its final page stamped with a logo that wasn't hers. "I thought we agreed to wait until next quarter," she said, voice measured across the table. The CEO didn't look. Up from his phone, plans changed. Timing was right. "You understand?" She kept her eyes on him. "I understand you took my deal and signed it under your company's name." He smirked faintly, finally setting the phone aside. "Your deal. You're still learning how this works. You bring ideas. I decide if they're worth pursuing. That's leadership." A quiet laugh escaped her, short, without humor. "Leadership. Don't take it personally," he said, leaning back. "You're young. You've got time. Wins like this, they belong to the people who can carry them, and I can't." His gaze flickered. "Not yet. But be patient. You'll get your shot." She nodded slowly, though the heat in her chest was hard to hide. "Patience. I've heard that before." Silence stretched between them. "You're lucky to even be in the room," he added, almost softly, as if it were a favor. Her reply was barely above a whisper. "Maybe you're lucky I was." For a moment his expression tightened, just slightly. But enough. The words hung in the air, heavier than either expected. She closed the file, sliding it toward him. "Congratulations on your acquisition," she said, standing. "I hope you enjoy explaining it without me." As she walked away, the tapping of his fingers against the desk faltered, breaking rhythm. He didn't call her back. The conference room still smelled faintly of stale coffee and cold ambition. She could feel the weight of it, not just the meeting, but the memory of those who had been here before. "They warned you, didn't they?" Marcus's voice came from the far end of the table. He was older, the kind of man who didn't waste words. She glanced at him. "About what?" He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "About how this place eats people like us." Quietly, neatly, her jaw tightened. "I've seen worse." "You think they'll let you walk away clean?" He shook his head. "Ask Camille." "Oh wait, you can't." She's somewhere pretending to consult while they've buried her name. A silence settled between them. She'd read the statements, the PR spin, words like mutual agreement and pursuing new opportunities. They made sure I stayed in the game, she said carefully. They're making sure you think you are, he replied. But I've seen this play before. They strip the credit, the leverage, and then they smile while the doors close behind. You, her fingers drummed softly against the folder in front of her. And what did you do when it happened to you? He leaned back, eyes narrowing. I stayed quiet, thought it was smart. But silence doesn't keep you safe, it just keeps you invisible. His words landed harder than she expected. The hum of the air conditioner felt louder now, the room suddenly smaller. Finally, she stood, sliding the folder into her bag. Then, maybe it's time someone stopped playing by their rules. Marcus didn't move, but his gaze followed her to the door. Careful, he said. They don't just erase names, they erase the fight, too. The elevator doors slid open with a chime, and he stepped out, clutching a worn leather folder like it was armor. His tie leaned just a little to the left, his suit clearly borrowed or bought for this single day. He hesitated when he saw her eyes flicking to the reception desk, then back. Morning, he said, voice careful. Testing the air, she nodded. You here for the pitch? Yeah, he admitted, shifting his weight. They said 10 o'clock. I've been, well, waiting. She glanced at the clock, 10:17. They'd left him sitting, deliberately. How long have you been here? Since 9, he said, with a small, embarrassed laugh. Figured it's better to be early, you know. Her stomach tightened. She remembered that same optimism, how it made you believe delays were just. Busy schedules, not silent messages. They'll call you up soon, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. You work here. His tone was hopeful, as if she might be a quiet ally in a place he didn't fully understand yet. I used to, she replied, meeting his gaze. Long enough to know the rooms upstairs aren't all what they seem. He frowned slightly. Should I be worried? She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Don't let them make you small before you've even started. For a second, he seemed ready to ask more, but the receptionist's phone buzzed. Breaking the moment, they'll see you now. The receptionist called without looking up. He straightened his tie, trying to smooth his jacket. As he walked toward the elevator, she caught his eye one last time. No smile, no wave, just a look meant to arm him with something stronger than hope. And he seemed to understand. The blinds filtered the morning light into narrow stripes across her desk. She slid the portfolio open, fingers brushing over the glossy pages, like they could feel the weight of each late night, each closed door dismissal. The charts glared back in clean lines and rising bars, the kind that made board members smile, nod, and approve bonuses. He stood in the doorway, leaning casually, though his eyes lingered on the graphs. Impressive numbers, he said, voice flat. They're more than numbers, she replied without looking up. Each one costs something. Cost, he smirked, stepping closer. You make it sound like you went to war. Her jaw tightened. Sometimes war doesn't look like gunfire. Sometimes it's being told your idea isn't quite right until someone else repeats it. He glanced at the quarterly growth curve. All I see is proof you're doing well. That's the thing, she said softly, turning a page. These numbers hide who tried to make me fail before I succeeded. He shifted, his casual stance faltering. You think people are out to get you? I don't think, she said, finally meeting his eyes. I know. But I also know they won't be the ones holding the pen when the report goes public. He chuckled, but it was shorter than before. Well, results speak for themselves. She closed the folder gently, the click of the clasp sharper than it should have been. They do. But they don't tell the whole story. People like you rely on that. Silence spread between them, thick and steady. He broke eye contact first, pretending to check his watch. Board meetings in 15, she nodded. I'll be ready. And for the first time, it was clear she wasn't the one being measured anymore. The clinking of cutlery still echoed faintly from the banquet hall. She folded her napkin slowly, buying herself seconds before answering. The reporter's gaze was sharp, pen poised like it could cut through her composure. You've been unusually quiet about their behavior, he said, almost testing her. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. Quiet doesn't mean still. He raised an eyebrow. Then what does it mean? She tilted her head, letting the silence stretch. It means I've been watching. And when people think you're not moving, they tell you everything. The reporter scribbled something quickly. So you're planning to speak out? Her eyes softened, though there was steel behind them. Not yet. Truth works best when it arrives without warning, he chuckled. Sounds like you've got a strategy. She didn't deny it. I learned a long time ago, shouting just warns the guilty. Silence lets them hang themselves with their own rope. He glanced over his shoulder, as if sensing the weight in her words. Some would say you're letting them get away with it. Some, she replied quietly, confuse patience with permission. His pen slowed, and when the moment comes, she met his gaze, steady. Then they'll understand what my quiet was for. The hum of distant conversation filled the space between them. He looked down at his notes, then back at her. You're not afraid. I'm careful, she said simply. He nodded, folding his notebook shut. I'll be watching. She pushed her chair back, standing with measured grace. So will they. They just don't know it yet. And with that, she left him there, pen in hand, mind already racing. The contract lay between them, the paper heavy despite its thinness. He leaned back, watching her sign, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. You really think this changes anything? He asked. She didn't look up. It already has. His chuckle was low, dismissive. You're still the same woman they refused last week. And you're still the man who thought that refusal would stand, she replied. Sliding the document toward him, he tapped the page with his pen, but didn't take it. This is just paper. Her gaze lifted, steady. So was the one you signed when you sold the building. Funny how paper can own you. A flicker crossed his face, small but there. He glanced toward the corner of the room where two other executives stood, suddenly too quiet. You blindsided us, he muttered. You gave me the map, she said softly. I just followed it faster than you thought I could. His fingers drummed on the table. You think the board will stand for this? They already have. She leaned in slightly. They signed before I walked in. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, the kind that made air feel heavier. He pushed back his chair slowly. This isn't over. She gathered her bag, her movements unhurried. It never is. That's the beauty of it. One of the executives shifted uncomfortably, glancing at her with something close to respect. The other avoided her eyes altogether. She paused at the door. Next time you underestimate someone, make sure they're not holding the pen. The sound of the latch clicking shut behind her felt louder than it should have. Inside, they sat frozen, not yet realizing the storm had already started. Phones rang, but no one picked up. Screens flashed red and green, yet no one moved. Conversations stalled mid-sentence. "You seeing this?" A trader muttered, his voice low. Across the floor, another shook his head. Could be a glitch, but his eyes stayed glued to the numbers. Sliding down, too steady to be random dot in the glass-walled boardroom above. The executives didn't notice the silence below. One leaned back, chuckling. "Rumors, that's all." People panic over shadows. Shadows usually mean something's in the way of the light, a younger associate said, almost to himself. The CEO smirked. "Relax, we've weathered worse, but—" His assistant's phone buzzed. She read the message twice before speaking. "Sir, the sale went through. Full acquisition." The room stilled. "Who?" he asked. She hesitated. "You're not going to like it." He slammed a hand on the table. "Who?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Her, the one from the bank." The smirk fell. "Impossible." The younger associate glanced out toward the trading floor, where the tension had thickened into something physical. "Looks like the market doesn't think so." No one moved. Even the hum of the buildings seemed to fade. The CEO's jaw tightened. "Find out exactly what she's holding." "She's holding us," the associate said quietly. The CEO's glare cut through the air, but the truth hung heavier than his anger. Below, the traders exchanged glances, the kind that marked the beginning of a story. They'd tell for years. The market didn't roar. It didn't scream. It simply waited. The air in the trading floor seemed too thin. Every eye turned to the massive screen mounted high above, where her face filled the frame calm, unhurried. 55 billion, someone whispered, as if saying it too loud would make it more real. In the boardroom upstairs, the CEO's hand froze mid-reach for his coffee. "Pause the feed," he ordered. No one moved. On the screen, she continued, "This decision comes after repeated patterns of discriminatory practices. My patience is no longer for sale." Murmurs rippled through the floor below. A trader glanced at another. "She's not bluffing." The CFO cleared his throat. "We can negotiate." She looked straight into the camera, the faintest trace of a smile ghosting her lips. "You've had years to negotiate. You chose not to listen." The CEO's jaw clenched. "Cut the broadcast." The tech team didn't respond. The feed was live on every channel. There was no cutting it now. Downstairs, a young intern whispered, "She just pulled the plug on all of us." Her voice softened, but the weight didn't lift. "This is not revenge. This is accountability. And accountability is expensive." A long silence followed, the kind that makes people realize how loud they've been living until it's gone. In the reflection of the glass walls, the CEO caught his own expression, pale, stiff, smaller than he'd ever looked. She ended, simply, "We will not be part of your story anymore." The screen went black. No one clapped. No one cursed. Phones began to buzz, each vibration carrying the same message. The street was shifting, and it would not shift back. For the first time in years, the power in the building belonged to someone outside it. The trading floor buzzed, with a frantic, disorganized energy, not the confident hum of profit, but the sharp, uneven pulse of loss. "She's pulled every contract." A voice trembled from the corner. "All of them." The CEO's gaze darted to the massive ticker screen. Numbers plunged in jagged lines. Each drop was another vein cut open. The CFO leaned in, voice low. "We can stall. Maybe offer her." "You think she's listening now?" the CEO snapped, his tone stripped of its earlier arrogance. From across the room, an assistant clutched a phone. "Sir, our largest client just followed her lead." For a long moment, no one moved. The air felt thick, every breath measured. She said nothing. One board member muttered, "And she destroyed us." The CEO's hand shook as he reached for the glass of water. It hit the table harder than he meant. "We fixed this," he said, but it sounded more like a question than a command. Phones kept ringing. Some went unanswered. Others ended with quiet, clipped goodbyes. An older partner, once his loudest defender, removed his glasses. "This isn't just her. This is everyone she gave courage to." The CEO turned toward the window, watching the city he'd once felt above. Now it looked far away. The CFO cleared his throat again. We need to call her." Silence. The CEO didn't turn back. His reflection in the glass was pale, uncertain, smaller than before. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its edge. "She won't answer." Somewhere in the background, the ticker ticked lower, each point another silent blow. The room didn't erupt. It didn't argue. It just deflated. No one said it out loud, but they all knew the fall wasn't coming. It was here. The cameras still flashed, even as she stepped away from the podium. Her voice lingered in the air, not loud, but heavy enough to still the room. One of the executives caught up with her in the corridor. His tie loosened, eyes darting to the reporters spilling into the hallway. "You didn't have to make it public," he muttered. She didn't stop walking. "You didn't have to make it ugly." He swallowed, searching for the words he thought might fix this. "We can talk numbers again. Privately, there's still a deal." "There's no deal," she said, cutting him clean. "Not with people who think dignity is negotiable." His jaw flexed. "You think walking away makes you stronger?" "No," she said, finally meeting his eyes. "It makes me free." She pushed open the glass doors. The evening air hit her face, cool, steady. From inside, voices rose, fragments of panic echoing off marble walls. She didn't turn back. Hours later, she returned to the building, not to them, but to pass through the lobby on her way to another meeting upstairs. Their boardroom lights were off, chairs scattered like the aftermath of a storm. Through the glass, she saw one of them hunched over a phone, face pale, the weight of loss finally visible. She kept walking, heels clicking softly. Some victories didn't need witnesses. The boardroom was quieter now, not out of respect, but fear. Papers lay scattered, coffee cooling in untouched cups. "We need to control the narrative," one of them said, his voice low, as if the walls could testify. Another shook his head. "There's no narrative to control." She took the funding. "The press knows. The feds are circling." Silence sat between them, heavy and unbroken. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang and stopped, unanswered. "You think she planned this?" one asked, almost to himself. "She didn't need to," came the reply. "We handed it to her. All she had to do was walk away." The CEO leaned back, staring at the ceiling as though the right angle might reveal an escape. "We can still salvage." "No," interrupted the CFO, his voice sharper now. "You can't salvage trust. Not after that meeting. Not after what you said to her." The CEO's jaw tightened. It was business. It was personal, the CFO said, and for the first time, he didn't look away. "And now it's over." The others avoided eye contact, flipping through papers they didn't read. Every tick of the clock sounded like a countdown. Outside, Cameras flashed for a different board, new partners, new deals. Inside, the empire they'd built over decades sagged in its foundation, cracking in ways no one could repair. Someone finally stood, gathering his coat. "We'll meet again next week." But they all knew there wouldn't be a next week. Not for them. As the door shut, the CEO sat alone, the hum of the air conditioner his only witness. The power he once wore like armor now felt like weight he couldn't carry, and the walls, they didn't feel so soundproof anymore. The leather chair creaked as he leaned back, phone in hand, thumb dragging slowly across the screen. Each photo felt heavier than the last. Board dinners, award ceremonies, charity galas. She was there in all of them, always at the edge of the frame, polite smile, eyes watchful. A knock at the door broke the silence. The CFO stepped in without waiting. "They've called another press conference." He didn't look up. "Without me?" "Yes," the CFO said, standing in the doorway. "Without you." The CEO's jaw twitched. "They think I'm done. They don't think they know." Silence stretched between them. The hum of the city below seemed louder now. "You were there that day," the CEO said finally. "You saw how I saw how you spoke to her," the CFO cut in. "And I saw her walk away without raising her voice. That's the part they'll remember." The CEO turned the phone over, face down on the desk. "I built this place, and you lost it in 15 minutes, the CFO replied, softer now. "Power's like that. You don't notice it slipping until you're staring at the empty space, where it used to be." The CEO let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Outside the window, flashes of cameras lit the street, but none of them were for him. The CFO stepped back toward the door. "Get some rest." The CEO gave a faint, bitter smile. Rest doesn't change the ending. When the door clicked shut, the room felt colder. He picked up the phone again, staring at one photo longer than the rest, her eyes steady, as if she knew all along how this would end. The glass door shut quietly behind her, muting the echo of cameras and headlines. Inside, the air smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee. A young man in worn sneakers looked up from his laptop, startled. "You're her," he said, standing quickly. She smiled faintly. "Just someone who believes in ideas worth betting on." He hesitated before shaking her hand. "We've never had anyone like you walk in here." "I know," she replied, glancing at the whiteboard covered in messy diagrams. "That's why I'm here." Two women joined them from the back, nervous but curious. She asked questions, not about profits, but about the problems they were solving, the people they wanted to help. The young man admitted, "We almost gave up last year. No one would fund us." "That's not failure," she said. "That's the system deciding you don't fit its mold. The trick is, you stop asking to fit." They sat, talking in a circle. Her voice stayed low, her words deliberate. Every so often they exchanged glances, a mix of disbelief and hope. "You'll get funding," she said finally. "From me, enough to build without begging for a seat at anyone's table." Silence followed. One of the women blinked fast, as if holding back tears. "Why us?" She leaned back, her gaze steady. "Because once I was you, and someone thought I wasn't worth the risk. I'm just here to correct their mistake." When she stood to leave, their faces told her she had done more than sign a check. She had shifted the air in the room, made them feel seen. Outside, the noise of the city returned, but she carried with her the quiet certainty that this was The only kind of investment that truly paid back. The headlines still clung to her name like a shadow. In their version, she was ruthless, a storm that stripped banks of their wealth. But in hers, she had only tipped the scales back to where they belonged. "You don't feel guilty?" the journalist asked. His pen hovered, ready to catch any slip. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes calm. "Do you feel guilty when you return something stolen?" He shifted, the question cutting closer than he expected. "It's not that simple." "It never is," she replied. Silence pooled between them. The hum of the recorder was the only sound. She could feel him studying her, trying to fit her into the image they had painted, cold, calculating, unshakable. But that wasn't the truth. "I grew up watching my father's hands crack from work he was never paid for," she said quietly. "When I got older, I realized they had taken more than his wages. They had taken his place in the world." The journalist's pen stopped moving. "So yes," she continued, "I took something back. And I gave it to people who were told they'd never own a thing worth keeping." His throat tightened, though he tried to hide it. "They'll never tell it like that." "They don't have to," she said, leaning back. "The people who got their homes back, their businesses, they know the story." She stood, smoothing her coat. The interview was over. He didn't stop the recorder. He just sat there, watching her walk away, and for the first time, the headline in his mind didn't match the one they'd print tomorrow. She left the room carrying the same quiet truth she had always carried. They would remember the number, but she would remember the people.